Deciding which app to use to film your videos and what settings work best in each app can sometimes feel like a monkey trying to do a math problem. And if you're filming YouTube videos, like I'm about to do, one wrong setting can ruin everything. That's why in this video, we're going to look at two of my favorite filmmaking apps, Beastcam and Filmic Pro, show you the 7 settings you'll want to pay attention to for YouTube videos, and help you decide which app may be the best option for you. Okay, got my lights on. We'll focus on 7 areas you don't want to miss, especially the last one, because it's caused me the most issues in the past. So stick around to the end. When filming YouTube videos, I exclusively use my iPhone 11 Pro, just as I'm doing right now. Let me show you. Also, I'd usually be sitting in this chair speaking to the camera, but let's put the worm in the seat instead of me. Labyrinth reference for our demonstration. When it comes to resolution, if you click right here, Beastcam has 4 options. We have HD at 720p, Full HD at 1080p, Quad or Quality HD at 1440, and 4K. Now, when you're filming YouTube, I suggest 4K because you'll be able to zoom in and out and still maintain quality. Now, if we take a look at Filmic Pro, we really more or less have the same options. So we'll click right down here at this icon. We'll come up to resolution at the top left. And here we are on 4K, and we have a few options here as well, but more than Beastcam. We have 4K, 3K, 2K, and they're slightly different with Beastcam, as you can see right here on the right. But most people will choose either 4K or 1080. Why in between really wouldn't matter for YouTube. And anything below is really going to be a bit substandard. I would like to note right here that I'm on an iPhone 11 Pro and I'm using 8-bit. Now, when it comes to Beastcam and when it comes to Filmic Pro, you have 8-bit and 10-bit options, but you only have the 10-bit option when you have an iPhone 12 or above and some more advanced Android phones. Now, I would also like to note when it comes to our resolution and our aspect ratios up here at the top, you have a lot of choices, but with YouTube, it's a standard 16:9 aspect ratio. That's what you'll see on most monitors. That's what you see on YouTube. So make sure you stick with that ratio. Now, the second setting you'll want to pay attention to is frame rate. Here we are on Beastcam. If we click right here again, we have several options for frame rate from 24 up to 60 when we're in 4K. But notice if we switch to Full HD that we have 120 and 240 available. These are specifically used for slow motion. However, let's go back to 4K. What I would suggest is either filming in 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second. And the difference isn't a lot. However, typically 24 frames per second is what the eye would naturally see, and we'd see a certain blurriness that would be natural to the human eye. Now, when we film in 30 frames per second, it'll have more of a hyper realistic look to it. And notice when we switch over to Filmic Pro, we come down here and look for our frame rate right here. We have the same options as well, 24 through 60. However, if we were to change away from 4K to 1080p, the 120 and 240 for slow motion would be available. So as far as these two apps go, with frame rate, they're pretty much identical. But for YouTube, I choose 24 or 30 frames per second. The third setting you're going to want to look at is really pretty much in the same areas that we just looked. So let's go ahead and go back to Beastcam, and here we are with our resolution at the top, frame rate in the center, and at the bottom we have bit rate. Now, the higher the bit rate, theoretically, the more quality you're going to have. And on Beastcam, we have 4 options. Low, this will save you space. Standard, which will be whatever is normally filmed, the normal bit rate on your phone without one of these apps. Then we have high, and then we have the Beast super high bit rate. If you want to see more about bitrate, check out this video. It'll give you a better understanding of the details. However, for today, I want to say that I would suggest just going with high. It'll be more than fine for YouTube. Now, if we switch over to Filmic Pro and we go into our resolution, we're going to have the same options at the bottom. Let's scroll all the way over. Economy is the same as low. Standard, this is Apple standard because I have an iPhone, but it'll say maybe something different on your Android if you have an Android. It's the native bit rate on your phone. Then here is Filmic Quality. It's just another name for high bit rate. And Filmic Extreme, which is the same as Beastcam's Beast bit rate. Once again, I would go with Filmic Quality because it's sort of the sweet spot for keeping quality and posting to YouTube. So here we are back on Beastcam. What we want to do for number 4 is look at focus and exposure. And what's fantastic with both of these apps is you have these options which are called reticles. The reticle that is a circle is for exposure and the square reticle is for focus. This gives you the option to move your focus from one point to another. For example, we could focus over here, or we could focus over here, and we can change the exposure. Now, my exposure is locked at the moment. What I'll do here is unlock it, and you'll see that it turns white. The exposure is changed. Now, if I click it again, it'll set, but I want it to be a little bit more toward the blue that I have over here. I'm going to set it here. There we go. And then come back and look at our worm. Now with Filmic Pro, we have pretty much the same thing. We can click, tap it, and it will lock, it'll turn red, and we can do the same with our exposure. We can click on it, move it around, lock it by clicking on it, it turns red. To unlock it, just click again, so on. You also have manual control. So if we go back to Beastcam, we can adjust our exposure down here at the bottom. What we have here is ISO, shutter speed, and just our overall exposure. And by clicking on these, we have a scrolling bar that will allow us to adjust exposure. What you want to do is find a balance between ISO here and shutter speed here. Now, since I'm filming in 24 frames per second, what I want to do is adhere to our rule of 1 over double our frames per second. So with shutter speed, let's go to 48, 1 over 48, which is double our frame rate. And our ISO we can adjust here, which will adjust our exposure. Now, if you don't want to use those two in balance, in conjunction, then you can just use the overall exposure bar right here and adjust as you want. But you'll notice that it will adjust the settings in your ISO and your shutter speed. If we switch over to Filmic Pro, we pretty much have the same thing, but right here is where it is. We can scroll here. This is the general exposure levels by scrolling back and forth. And if we want to keep something locked, touch the ISO at the top and it becomes red. That means it's locked. That way I can adjust the shutter speed at the bottom. I want to go to 1 over 48 here since I'm filming in 24 frames per second most likely, and I can lock it there and make adjustments later. Now what's really interesting is there's something called live analytics or visual analytics. Now I'm going to click right here, the VA button. Visual analytics gives you an extra element of control. We have focus peaking. Everything here in green is in focus, and you can adjust that by clicking on your focus right here, focusing in and out. And you'll notice when we come to something that is in focus, it will turn green. There we go. Now with visual analytics, we can go over here. Let's get out of that. We have zebra stripes. Zebra stripes will show us where areas are overexposed and underexposed. Anything that is underexposed will be dark blue, these lines here, and overexposed will be in red, as we can see on the worm's face. And then with visual analytics, we can come over here to false color. False color is similar, and what's interesting with false color is it gives you a whole spectrum of exposure. We can see as we move it, things that are in blue will be more underexposed, and as we reach red, they're overexposed. The sweet spot will be green. So let's get out of that. So let's compare that with Filmic Pro. Filmic Pro does have visual analytics, and we'll see they refer to them as live analytics. We'll just click right here. We have pretty much the same options at the top. We have focus peaking on the right. We have our zebra stripes on the left. And we have false color right here. But what's interesting is Filmic Pro offers one extra setting, which is called clipping. And this in essence is the same as our zebra stripes. I don't see much of a difference. So it's really up to you if you like to use it. Now, I would like to note one thing that Filmic Pro does not have, but Beastcam does, is the option for automatic visual analytics, and I like this function. If we click on this, when we're in here, let's say we're adjusting our focus, you won't see the visual analytics until you're making adjustments, and you see it's working right about here, and then it'll turn off. The same with exposure. As you're making adjustments, we'll get our zebra stripes automatically pop up, and when you've made your adjustments, say right about there, they'll disappear. So that's a nice function that you will find in Beastcam, but not Filmic Pro. And when it comes to audio, both apps have really similar options for input, format, and sample rate. At the moment, I'm using my microphone, and I've muted it because I'm screen recording. But if I were to unmute it, you would have these options. If you're planning to enhance the audio of your YouTube videos, then use an uncompressed format, such as PCM or AIFF. This way you'll maintain the audio's quality each time you edit and save your file. However, Filmic Pro goes a bit further, offering here on the right a slider for audio gain. Furthermore, if you go into the audio area, you have a few more options that Beastcam does not. For example, automatic gain control. This is used primarily when your phone's internal microphone is being used, or you have an external microphone that does not have gain control. And we also have voice processing right here, and this is pretty interesting. Filmic Pro says when enabled, this setting highlights audio frequencies in the range of human speech to bring out human voice better. So if you're recording YouTube videos, this may or may not be of benefit to you. When it comes to white balance, both apps have similar options. For white balance in Beastcam, we'll just come down here to the WB icon, press, and we have several options. Now at the top, let's scroll through these real quickly. We have daylight, cloudy, shade, tungsten, fluorescent, and gray card. Now, what you would most likely use is down here at the bottom left, auto white balance, and it'll automatically adjust for you. However, if you want to have a specific Kelvin and tint, you can go in here and adjust those yourselves by scrolling up and down with your Kelvin here and your tint here. But automatic white balance is most likely what you're going to use. Now, if we scroll over to Filmic Pro, it's a bit more engaging. So this is our white balance. Just tap down here on the bottom left, and we have our range in here. We can move it around, then it'll automatically adjust our temperature and our tint. That's pretty interesting. Now, we also have these options down at the bottom, just like we did on Beastcam. For example, tungsten, daylight, cloudy, and so on. But what's really interesting here is we have an automatic white balance, so you can choose. Not only that, what's nice about Filmic Pro is that if you tap it one more time, it becomes red, and that means it's locked. So just when your camera is on before you film, and the nice thing about locking white balance is when you're moving around, it won't automatically adjust to changes in light. And if you tap one more time from red to orange, this is pretty interesting because it will automatically lock white balance, not once you touch it, but once you start recording. So you have a little more control when filming. However, there is an issue when it comes to white balance with Filmic Pro that has caused a few filming flops for me. I'll explain that coming up next. Once you've figured out what settings get the best results for you, I suggest creating a preset. That way you only need to press a button and your app will automatically adjust to whatever settings you like. It's a time saver and a headache saver. Both Beastcam and Filmic Pro have preset functions. Let's go ahead and look here at Beastcam first. All you need to do is go to the top right and you'll see a P. If you click there, we'll have all of our current settings on the left. Now, make sure before you create a preset, you have the settings that you'd like to save. Once you're there, you only need to go to the top left and hit save, type in a title, and then click save again. You're good to go. Now, we have a similar thing with Filmic Pro. Go here to your gear icon, and at the top right, we have presets. Essentially, we'll do the same thing. Make sure your settings are ready, click save, and then give it a name, and hit save again. Fantastic. But let's test this out on both applications. So let's go back to Beastcam, and I have a Studio Blue, the top Studio Blue right here, and these are the settings that I've put in. Now, let's take specific notice to white balance right here. I've put in 6800 Kelvin and a 0 tint. What should happen is when I apply this preset, these are the settings that should come out. So let's go ahead and play with our white balance for just a moment. Let's just go up here and change the Kelvin to what we have, about 5200, and a tint of 5. Let's go into our preset, click on Studio Blue, and then hit apply, press OK, and let's take a look at our white balance. Where are we? Our Kelvin is 6799, essentially what we want, 6800, and our tint is 0. Perfect. Now I have the exact same settings over here on Filmic Pro. Let's go ahead and adjust the Kelvin a little bit. Let's bring it down to, let's say, just about 5000 Kelvin. Let's give it a bit of a strange tint, 22 tint. Okay, just for demonstration purposes. Let's go to our gear icon, presets. Now we're going to choose Studio Blue, the same as we just saw. Hit load, and what do we get? It's modified, and let's take a look at our white balance. Our white balance has not essentially changed. The problem is that our white balance settings did not follow along with our preset. So for Filmic Pro users, when using presets, be aware of white balance issues. So there are plenty of videos out there on Filmic Pro. But if you'd like to see how every single feature works on the Beastcam app, check out this video right here. You'll see everything from A to Z.